I want to tell you a story. Famous old catchphrase from a chap called Max Bygraves, who was a great entertainer of the 50s running up to the kind of 70s, even into the 80s. Gone now. Most of you won't even know who I'm talking about. His phrase was,
I want to tell you a story.
He was a good singer, very popular, and that's got nothing to do with this apart from I want to tell you a story. Because photos often should tell some kind of story. Or perhaps I should capture the imagination and ask questions. What I'm trying to say is it's ideal if a photograph poses some interest, something that sparks a narrative in the head, a conversation in the head, something that says, oh, yeah, I wonder how that got like that, or I wonder what's just off out of frame, or I wonder where they're walking to, or how long did it take to get like that? And this is all part and parcel of the concept of composition. And composition is it's huge, an absolutely huge gamut of what ifs, hows, wheres, why fors, don't do this, do that, golden ratios, rule of thirds, Fibonacci sequence, all of this stuff. And whether you understand it or not is not really terribly important. It helps, of course, but if you think about things in a different way, if you think about your photography as posing questions, maybe answering questions, how, what, why, those standard kind of questions that most people would be taught somewhere down their lives, then you're on to the right track. And as I was walking past this gate, well, it's not a gate anymore, is it? But there was a gate here once. There's a gate latch there, and there's some gate pins on this, although very curiously, the gate pin on this side is on this side against the wall, so I'm not entirely certain what hinged there. Perhaps it was somewhere else before. See, a story. I hadn't pre-rehearsed that or even noticed it, but there's a story. But what I want to do is to capture the story of the post and how it's been weathered and eaten away down here, because there's this wonderful steel bolt going through to some rocks behind, another steel bolt here with, now we discover, a gate pin behind it, hinge pin. It's rather nice. Down here is a little bit of sheep fur where one's rubbed against it walking through and lost a bit of its coat. Just a heavily weathered scene. It's very nice. I like it a lot. But how do you tell the story of this gatepost? Well, you've got to get in close. Now, I could get in real close, I say closer, with the wider angle lens, but I've got this on because I was shooting another story up there, which I'll show you in a moment. I'll quickly describe it. It's basically this field here, as you can see. Well, actually, you can't see a lot of, but there's lots of thistles in it, and the sheep, some of them are sitting in the thistles, and one was nicely peeking right the way through, and I needed this to get it, so I'll show you that in a moment. It was quite a nice shot. But here I was kind of captivated by this. How do we frame this up? Now, you'll see I'm not going to use a tripod for this, because I want to demonstrate in live view, as it were, here, how I can frame this. It's very much, what do I keep in and what do I take off? Am I too low here? And I think possibly I am. So this is why I'm not using a tripod. Position on this is absolutely everything. A tripod would make this very awkward. And I've got enough light. Where is it? Zoom back out so I can find what I'm pointing at. There it is. And I'm using the screen to kind of frame up. Another thing that's really important is get your angle to the screen right, because you've got reflections, everything coming in, which will affect your view of it. So change the angle, your angle to the screen as well. And I'm thinking pull out just a little. See, I don't need to see the whole post. We know it's a post just from the look at it. We can get an idea of its location, position, even after we zoom in. So it's somewhere around here, but I need to keep the sky out of it. I want the post over to the left-hand side of the frame, so I can see a little bit into the field beyond, and I need to capture a little bit of the wall that it's attached to, and I possibly even a bit of the path, but only a touch of the path. And I don't want everything in focus, so long lens 7.1, just to throw it a little, something like that. And I rather like it. It's a nice little shot. I'll clean it up, crop it a little, and put it up on screen for you. This is Winnett's Pass. From where you are, you don't get a sense of just how deep this is. But if I put up a photograph that I shot from a ridge over there back in June, you get an idea of how big this is. And of course there's a story here. It's a story of how it got here. It's a story of the ice ages and, well, far more than I could possibly convey here. But from a photographic sense, it's one of those wow moments, isn't it? It's one of those images that you can turn from a 3D into a 2D quite easily and produce a photograph that could be quite captivating. But of course it does take light, and that's not something we've got a lot of at the minute, or good light at least. It's overcast and dull. So there's no two ways about it. To get a good photograph of this vista, I need light, and I don't have it. But that doesn't mean to say I can't get a photograph that tells a story. And I'm recording this before I've really looked at these photos, because it was one of those spur of the moment things. It was lucky I had the long lens on, because way down there, some bloody fool decided that it was a good idea to just park and let his passenger out so he could take some pictures, and then he started flying a drone. And this thing isn't exactly, flat. It's incredibly steep. In fact, it's so steep, my motorhome gets up at about, 12 mile an hour up this stretch here where he stopped in first gear. It's that steep. It's incredibly difficult to get up and down in an older vehicle. I mean, even modern vehicles struggle. I've seen people cycling up it. One born every minute. But anyway, I got a photograph of this bloody fool flying a sodding drone down there. It's not a good photograph. It's technically okay, but it tells a story of just how utterly selfish people can be. There's a little bit of light coming across here, and it might just get this this cave on the hillside on the other side. I'm fully aware that this is not a great photo. Is that light moving? Very slowly perhaps. But the cave is the interesting part here, and I'm framing it up so that I get the cave on the hillside pretty much on the third left hand side, and then the vista in the background with people in it. I might wait for the light to get a better shot, but the point is that again it's telling a story. It's a cave with an opening. Well, caves have got openings, haven't they? otherwise we wouldn't know they're there. But there's a path running right the way down to the road up to it. I've never been up to it. In actual fact, I've never been at this point here, so I didn't even know it existed. It does look as though the incredibly brave could scramble down to it from above there. I do rather fancy taking a look in it, but probably not today. And it's just an interesting kind of shot again. Yeah, like I said, there's no light on this. This isn't a great photo at all, but it is serving the purpose of talking about the cave and its setting, and it's posing that, well, I wonder what's in there. Is it a cave? Is it a mine? Because there's loads of mines around here as well. Someone in need of the emergency services. Oh. Here, emergency services in the valley as well. There's some smoke down there. Hope no one's seriously injured. Last night, I even got a little video on the phone. I think it was the peak of the tree on it over there, which you may be able to see, or the next peak over. I have to check. But there was some kind of rescue going on over there. Either that or it was a military exercise with a helicopter which came over me, which was interesting to say the least. So I got a little distracted by the ambulance there, forgot my thread a little bit. But I suppose technically another story, maybe not one that is ours to tell. But getting humans interested in anything that you're doing involves a story. If we're selling something, which in a sense we are with the photos, aren't we? We're selling the image, whether it's for someone to part with money or just part with their time. We are trying to get something that they have, which in a lot of cases, certainly online, is their attention, but perhaps in print is their money. And being able to convey a story is an important part of that, because we relate to stories, humans relate to stories. So having a narrative, having opposing questions, all kinds of things, it's an important part of creating an image, an important part of pretty much photography, the whole of photography, or even kind of drawn art, painted art. It's about captivating someone. You can grasp just that simple thing, then, as I said, you're on your way. You don't need to understand a lot more about composition. Just that one thing will do you as a starting point. And if you start getting bogged down with golden triangles, not golden triangles, golden circles, or golden spirals, that's golden spirals, you see, bogged down in it already. Now, if you're bogged down with that kind of stuff, and you perhaps don't understand it, or it's becoming confusing, go back to basics. Find the story, and then find a way of showing that story. So here's another question. Do photographs have to tell a story? No, of course they don't. There are all kinds of photographs that really don't tell much of a story. And wide, big shots like this don't tell much of a story. It's a photograph, it's a vista of the landscape. It's not doing anything other than conveying what the landscape looks like. Now, yes, you can concoct a story, you can provide some kind of narrative to it, but heck, sometimes you just don't need to, do you? It is what it is, isn't it? Such as this panorama, which is handheld, which is very quick and dirty. Please don't have a go. I know I should be using the tripod, but you're on it for the moment. And it's not a great shot, I'm only really using it to convey the fact that there's some light up there, and it's a shot of those hills. Is there a story there? There isn't in my mind when I shot it, because it's a nice enough kind of distance scene. Is it a story? No, it's not a story in my head right now, I can tell you that. Could you think of a story for it? Yeah, I'm sure if you worked hard enough, but it's a photo for photo's sake. It's a panorama for panorama's sake. Not every photo needs a story. The kind of photos that do tell stories generally are those that have got more detail in them. It's when we talk about photos that talk about things and not photos that are of things, and there's a video about that up in the corner as well. It's all about how you perceive things. Photos about things do tell stories. Photos of things less so. So the vista, it's a photo of something. The post earlier, it's a photo about something. It's always something really worth keeping in mind. Well, as you can see, I'm no longer on the side of a hill, nor am I in the motorhome. Actually, I shot the bulk of this video about 6, maybe even 8 weeks ago now. Time flies when you're having fun. Anyway, let's continue to talk a little bit about photos and stories. In actual fact, let's talk more about the story of a couple of photos. Now, after I stopped filming that day, I got 3 or 4 humdingers, and I'm really very happy with them. And the reason I stopped filming that day was, well, largely it was kind of a little bit up here. I got to the end of the path, and the path just kind of disappeared down a crag, and I didn't feel like going down there. But then I had a phone call home, and that wasn't a great phone call, and well, I stopped, but I didn't stop taking photos. So earlier on you saw this shot of the ram with this kind of ancient tree and broken building behind it, and I really liked that that building and the tree, because there's a real close proximity to them. But they're beyond the wall. I can't get to them. Yeah, the sheep in the field, the wall is, well, it's a farmer's field, yeah, not allowed to go in their private space. But I can fly over it. Because of course drone photography really does allow you to put the camera in pretty much any place that is possible to put a camera. As I was contemplating what to do next and suffering from the phone call home, I spied another tree. In fact, there's a few trees around, but there's this really one lone tree, and lone trees always tell some kind of story, don't they? And this one really took my attention because it's right next to a dry stone wall. It was eventually picking up quite some nice light. In actual fact, the cloud base largely cleared completely, and we ended up with some really beautiful evening sunlight. And I got 2 or 3 cracking shots of this lone tree against the wall. Take a look at these. I was absolutely determined to get a sunset shot with the sun looking kind of over Winnett's Pass, because the sun really does come right the way around, and yeah, at the right time of year with the right kind of cloud cover really should just push light straight down into Winnett's Pass onto the road. This evening it didn't. The cloud cover was still kind of there, and that made for some beautiful light being picked up in the clouds. Take a look at these. talking to a couple that were just setting up a wild camp right on the very top of the hill above the road, and they said that they'd really like to see a cloud inversion in the valley in the morning. I said, well, I've been here a few times at this kind of time of year or a bit earlier in the year, and I've seen these cloud inversions and they are absolutely stunning. And the very next morning we got this. Don't get too bogged down with this idea of telling stories, because a great deal of the time the story is in the viewer's head and not necessarily in the intention of the photograph. But if you think about it with that kind of frame of mind, then, as I said earlier, composition can kind of just start with the story and work on it from there. If you've enjoyed it, please click the like button, click the subscribe button, and if you've really enjoyed it, please buy me a coffee. And as you saw earlier, there's a limited edition print available, just 5 copies of this for sale. If you'd like one, there's a link in the description. I really do hope you've enjoyed this. Please share it around, do anything to help me out with the channel on that, and thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.